Well, hello again for our little corner, this time up in the northern tier of Clinton County in Champlain at St. Mary's Catholic Church. Delighted to be here with a guy we've heard an awful lot about.
Not too much, I hope.
All great things, Father J. Seymour. How are you?
Good, good. It's a pleasure to share my experiences with you and partake in this way, yes.
Well, you know, it normally wouldn't have any great impact if I said to our little corner viewers that we were going to interview somebody who spent some time in Peru, because they would think it was just a little ride down that way. However, this is an entirely different Peru. First of all, let's find a little bit about you. Are you a North Country product?
Oh, yes, definitely North Country. Born and raised in Ogdensburg, New York. My family's still there.
There you go.
Yep. And 14 children in my family, so I always used to kid people that, it wasn't until I was about 16 years old that I realized my mother was really skinny. It seems she was always pregnant. No, I got 6 brothers and 7 sisters, and they're all living, and it's great, great for me. That's my first, my communal experience, and that's where my vocation surfaced to, mostly in the family, I think.
And that's some pretty good common ground, because all of our viewers know that Kay and I raised lots of kids, actually 15. I had to top them, right? We had 13 of our own and then raised a couple after some of our kids were killed in a car crash. So I just realized we're now up to almost 20 grandchildren, and we were at 15 great-grandchildren. So
Well, I think
big families are wonderful.
They are, right. We don't see that too much today, and parents have their hands full these days with 2 or 3, but certainly the big family experience is unique, yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, Ogdensburg, if you're going to be a Catholic priest in the North Country, that's a good place to be from, isn't it?
Well, I suppose I grew up there as an altar server too, at a young age, and I actually used to serve the bishop, so I got to know some of the bishops, not well, but certainly on a personal basis, because went to the Catholic school there, and we used to go over in the morning and serve the bishop at the early morning mass. Of course, we'd be able to go to school late and everything, and that was great. But so we got to know some of the bishops. I think the first bishop I served was Bishop Donnellan.
Oh my!
And but then later on, of course, we had a lot of exposure to the local bishops, being of the cathedral parish. Yes.
It's a wonderful church there. It just always inspires me when I have occasion to go there.
Yes, and I'd recommend it to everyone in the diocese to at least once to pass through the cathedral. And there's always opportunities for different groups to make it there, and there's always invitations, but we don't always take advantage of it. I think even just recently there was a Jubilee Mass for married couples.
Yes.
And we only one couple from our parish who went down. They had a wonderful experience. But there was one parish, I think it was Messina, who had something like 50 couples who showed up for that Mass with the bishop, celebrating married life, whether it be 25 years or 30 years or more. And there was a few couples of 60 years. But this brings people together and helps us to identify as church when we come together from different parts of the diocese. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure there are some of our viewers, especially younger viewers, who don't realize the width and breadth of the Diocese of Ogdensburg. It's a pretty big diocese.
It is. There are 8 dioceses in the state of New York, and Ogdensburg Diocese is the largest in terms of territory. We're the smallest in terms of population, but we do cover a lot of ground, and it's becoming more and more common now that the priests have to cover a lot of that ground, because many of our priests are covering 2 and 3 parishes.
It's great. Kate, as Calvin knows, and nothing in my life is a secret, but we love to camp up on the St. Lawrence River near Waddington in a place called Coles Creek in the summer. And it's always wonderful for us to go to the little church in Waddington for Sunday morning Mass.
Right.
Makes the whole trip worthwhile.
No, it is. It's a beautiful area. I enjoy that ride. When I go home now, too, I go through that area. And you'll have to go just a few miles more, and you'll see my parents' camp. So next time you're up there,
you can... kidding.
Yeah, that's right.
At least wave on the way by.
That's right. At least you can wave, yeah.
Calvin and I did one of the best programs we ever did was a tour we took through the Remington Museum there in Ogdensburg. I lived in the North Country much of my life, and Calvin's been here forever and ever, and never had we been there. So we made a point a couple of years ago, and it was terrific.
It was, and I think just a couple of years ago they did an addition and some renovations and restorations there. And it is a marvelous resource that we have in the North Country, and again, it's really worthwhile to
Most
visit.
people are just plain not aware of it.
Right.
They're confused as to which Remington we're talking about.
Right.
They want to see a lot of guns. That's not the place, except an occasional cowboy with a
Right.
gun.
Yeah, they have some prints. I don't think I have any prints here, but I know in my parents' home, in many of the homes I come across the diocese, but particularly in Ogdensburg, a lot of the homes do have Remington prints. And they really are quite nice. Really are quite nice.
So tell me how you ended up in Champlain, New York. You haven't even been here a year yet, have you?
Well, no, I'm working on 4 months, 3.5 months. How did I end up coming here? I got a call from the bishop. That's how I ended up.
That's the way it works.
That's the way. No, I didn't. It's not something I anticipated. I had just come off from after getting back from the missions. I spent 8 years in Bolivia and Peru, but our mission is in Peru, of course. But we go to Bolivia for studies. But I was gone a little over 8 years, and coming back, usually we have a transition period, and I spent a year working in Carthage at St. James in Carthage with Father Kevin O'Brien, and then I started studies in Ottawa. I had a sabbatical year, which turned into 2 years. And so I just finished, actually, last April, my studies in Ottawa, Canada, at St. Paul University. And coming back to the diocese in April, I was asked to be administrator in Ausable Forks. So I was there just for a couple of months, and they were in need of a pastor. And so I knew the bishop was going to call me, but I expected him to call me and say, well, all right, you're going to be pastor here at Ausable Forks. And he called me, and he mentioned, all right, well, we're thinking of sending you to Champlain, New York. And I just paused for a minute, because I was surprised, and then of course I said, well, sure, Bishop, if that's what you want, that's where I'll go. So I'm following in the footsteps of Father Don Robinson. He's a wonderful man, a wonderful pastor, and
You see, he left his license plates out in the garage. So.
He did. Well, we get a shot of those, I think, before we leave. If you see a car in Watertown without license plates, you know who it belongs to, right?
Well, this entire North Country has wonderful history. We spend a lot of our time doing history. That's why we're asking about your history. But this community and this town up here in Champlain is just rife with history of all kinds. We love the old buildings. We love this church. This is a magnificent church.
It is a beautiful church, and all you have to do is walk out the door, and you see the statue of Champlain there in the backyard, and so you see some of the history coming through there. But the church itself too is quite beautiful. The cornerstone was laid in 1885, I believe, and just the structure itself, they've just done some pointing work there and working on the structure, and it really is in pretty good shape. There's a lot of other work that needs to be done, of course, as in most old buildings, with heating systems and lighting and that sort of thing, but the structure is very sound still. And if you walk in the church, the front doors, and just look in the back and see those stained glass windows, it's almost breathtaking. It's just very beautiful.
It's really nice. It was a nice experience on a beautiful, sunshiny day in mid-October. Take a nice little trip up north here and sit down and speak to you. We're going to find out a great deal more about Father J. Seymour and the diocesan mission in Peru as our little corner continues. Calvin said before he pushed the button, shall we head south? To the Peru that we have in mind today, and an incredible place that people who are Catholics in this area probably know about, but let's talk a little bit about our mission in Peru.
Well, it's a marvelous experience to get down there and work. Now, our diocese has been down there for about 40 years now. I think just this coming year they're celebrating their 40th anniversary. Father Roger Martin, who worked in Dannemora for many years, one of the very first ones, and Paul Hagen was the other first of the missionaries to go down there. And this came at a time around the Vatican Council when the Pope John the 23rd, was actually calling for a sharing of resources, and in particularly sharing of personnel resources from the Western world to mission areas such as in South America and Africa and other places, because of the shortage of vocation and because of the great needs down there. So a number of dioceses actually did respond, and Ogdensburg was one of those dioceses that did respond. I think it was Bishop Smith, perhaps, who contacted over in Rome or made friends with the Bishop of Arequipa in Peru. Arequipa is the diocese where we work down there. And they made that personal contact, and then, of course, when Father Hagen expressed interest, he was accepted and he went down. And he really broke ground, and I think when he went down there, really he was a true missionary. It was just had to be, because conditions now are somewhat different, a little bit more advanced now, and just in terms of communication or other resources that are available to us now, much easier to get around. But back then, just really rugged terrain, and he worked up in the mountains, and he worked up there for a number of years, and eventually moved to the coast to Mollendo, which is the main site of our mission now, and also the port city or port village, really, of Maharani, which is it's a very tiny village, but it is one of the major ports on the coast, on the Pacific coast there, for Peru. And so Father Roger and Father Paul were down there, and they really started from scratch down there. And at that time there was one parish already established in the city of Mollendo, and Father Paul and Father Roger started in a park down there. It would be a public park, and also there was a hospital close by, so they had a chapel in the hospital, and so they would have perhaps office space in the hospital, but on Sunday they'd go to the park and basically celebrate Mass in the park, and that was the beginning of the parish. And at that time, we're talking, late 1960s, 1970s, early 1970s. The population again was closer to the ocean area and closer to the center of the city, and nothing was up above. They worked in another area of the city for a while and completed building a small church there, put the roof on it, and lived in an apartment. I think around that time too, Father Andy Amiat went down, and a few other priests, over in Dannemora now. John Luby was down there for a while, and these were the early missionaries, and then Father John Kenahan was down shortly after that, and I think it was Father Kenahan who started the construction of our main church now. And as I said before, there was practically nothing up, and it was just desert hills and maybe a few homes, but that's where he built the church. Now, if you go down there now, the majority of the population is all shifted up north, so it's a tremendous expansion. And that's people who maybe come from the hills, maybe the farming hasn't been that good, or the herding, and so they come to the coast looking for work, or looking for a place to stay. So a lot of people have kind of made their way, drifted to areas like Mollendo, or they're drifting to the port area expecting to find work in Maharani, either fishing or working at the port. And so there has been tremendous expansion now. So I would say close to 70% of the Catholic population now pertains to our parish, and only maybe 30% in the older parish, which is down below. And we have now 6 active centers. There's a 7th actually, but there's no chapel in the 7th center. But we have 6 centers where we have chapels now. A lot of those chapels were built with the help of the diocese, just again starting from scratch. You just get a little donation and then start building, trying to clear off a base area, and just or maybe starting with a simple wooden structure, and eventually working up to building a chapel where people can come and gather, and especially for Sunday worship. And so we have 6 centers, including a major church in Maharani, which again Father Hagen was instrumental in building there, and it's a very exciting challenge to work with these people. Of course, you have to first adjust to the culture, adjust to the language, and that's going to take you a couple of years just to get into that swing. So, but you work into the culture, you work into the areas, and usually you begin to get a little bit comfortable, and it's time to come back to the diocese. So, which was kind of my story with me too, But you're ready to come back, and we go down with that understanding too. And the people down there are just marvelous. They're very open. They're very appreciative of our presence there, and very supportive of our priests and who are down there. Well, we go down and we have to preach a homily in Spanish, and we're struggling, and they accept that. I mean, they don't make fun of you. They come to support you in that sense, and they say, oh, well, and they'll give you some pointers perhaps, but very, very supportive in that sense. And that really makes it, I think, the support that we receive down there, not only from people here who support you, but especially the people down there who appreciate your presence, who are very good to their priests, that really sustains one in the work when you're down there.
It's easy to see the direct impact you have on the population. This mission has done marvelous things down there over the years. I don't know what kind of a vision the early priests had when they went down there, but I bet they look back and say, yeah, this is okay.
Oh, I think so. I mean, that's definitely one of the things that you would notice is, even in terms of physical structures that have been built through the parish or with the help of the parish. Father Roger Martin, for example, worked in the city of Mollendo for a while, but then he moved out to the valley area and built out there. He built the first school that was in the valley, and I mean it's not a long distance away. It's several miles, maybe 10 or 15 miles from the city of Mollendo, but there are a lot of smaller villages out that area, and so he built the first school there, as well as a number of chapels that are still standing there. And just a few years ago, when Father Roger was still in relatively good health, his health is not too good right now, but he expected to go down, he was invited to go down, because they wanted to honor him as like the founder of this school. And he planned on going down, but his health at the last minute prevented him from going down. But so they still remember the priests who were down there, and all of the priests who've been down there. If they go back for a visit, they're always warmly received and enthusiastically received down there, and they appreciate our presence, as you said, and they also appreciate what we're trying to do for them, and we're just trying to again help them to help themselves. We do offer emergency relief. This past year, there was a terrible earthquake down there, and the valley was devastated. Not so much in the city of Mollendo, which is built, really has a rock basis. I mean, it's desert coast, but it's really solid. So the structures weren't as affected in our area as they were in the valley. So some of these churches, even churches that Father Martin had built, there was heavy damage on a lot of those churches, and a lot of isolation now. So the emergency relief that should have come normally from Arequipa, which is a major city, which would have the resources to help, they were hurt themselves. But to get down to the valley area, those roads were blocked. So the first people on the scene were really our priests who were down there now. Father Pat Mundy, who has a degree in social work, so he was perfect for the job.
That was great.
So he was right there on the scene to help these people and to help to direct the aid really that was coming down. And our diocese responded immediately also, very generously. And so that money was channeled basically to Father Mundy to see, where it could be best used in supporting these people who were really had the wind knocked out of them, I think, a lot of them.
So this, your time there was altogether a good experience for you, wasn't it?
Oh, I think so. I look back at it now, and I definitely say it was a good experience. I would do it again. at a blink. I was ready to come back, though, because it is very taxing. I found it very taxing, very demanding, and I was looking, when it did come time for me to change, or we had a replacement, Father Bob Decker replaced me, I was ready to come back. So I'm not, at this point I'm very happy to be here in Champlain, working here in the church and working in the diocese here. I'm not looking to go back to work. I would be interested in going back to visit, and I may do that this coming year. But at this point I'm very content to be home and working here.
But you made a lot of friends.
Yes, oh yes, I still have friends down there. We don't keep contact with them as much as the first couple of years, but yes, I still have friends down there, and there are people I would like to see again and visit again, yes.
I'd love to look at pictures, and we have lots of pictures and lots of memorabilia, and we'll do that as our program continues. If the picture quivers when he presses the button, it's because we're laughing, because we have special digitally produced visual aids. When I say digitally, I mean the five-finger method. We couldn't find a map of South America and Peru, so Father
That's right.
Jay has drawn us one.
You are in for a real treat, and I've been looking for an opportunity for I don't know how long to display my artistic talents here, and this is probably the best opportunity I've had in years to do this here.
It's
so
wonderful.
as everyone can clearly tell,
This picture could be many things, but in this case,
someday it will be framed. I'll let you know, and I'll send it on to you. But everyone can tell this is South America. Here's North America up here. So I just want to give you a rough idea where Peru is and where our mission is, okay? So if New York is up here, actually it's up here more in this area. If you go directly south from New York, you're going to hit Peru, okay? That sounds weird because over here we have the Pacific Ocean. Here's the Pacific, and over here is the Atlantic. And so New York is on the Atlantic coast, but if you go directly south, you're going to hit the Pacific Ocean, and you're going to hit Peru. That's because South America, of course, shifts over a little bit there. And our mission is actually on the southern coast. So it's right here in the very southern part of Peru, and it's on the coast of Peru. And so just a few miles, I would say within a couple of hours, 4 hours at the most, probably less, you would be in neighboring Chile. And Chile runs down, of course, to the very tip of South America. So that's just a rough idea. If anyone would like a copy of this drawing, for a minimal price,
we won't sell them for much.
But it would support the missions,
Anything
So
to support the mission.
That's right. So
actually, there is a lot of. Let me just put this over here out of the way. Just for a moment, in case we have to refer to it again.
Back to it again. I think we'll.
But there, Peru's actually there's a lot of square miles in Peru, and there's a lot of very interesting, multifarious terrain.
I couldn't give you, in terms of mileage, I'd give you misinformation probably if I talked in terms of territory and area-wise. But certainly in comparison to the United States, it's not that large. But it is. You're right. It is a tremendously rich and varied country in itself. Now, within that country, which would encompass might be the size of the state of Texas, roughly. That might be about the size of it. But within that country, you have like 3 different climates and 3 different terrains that are just completely different. Now, where our mission is, as I mentioned, is desert coast. So we have the beautiful ocean, Pacific Ocean there, lovely beaches, especially in our area of the missions. We should go for miles. And then if you just off the ocean, you'll see a real rugged desert type terrain, and without irrigation, without water, it would just completely dry, very dry. There's very little rain in our area in their winter months, which for us would be our summer. So particularly in June, July, perhaps in May, you'll get like a drizzly type rain, but there's no real accumulation in those months. And so that's the desert coast area. If you go inland, if you go up to the city of Arequipa, which is a major city of about 1 million people, that's at 8,000 feet above sea level. But the sun is there almost all year round. And because it is so close to the equator, it's not, at night it would get cold in their winter months, but usually it's just very pleasant with that sun out there almost all year round. So again, it's dry, but it's high altitude. And then if you go inland, you would again see more of that mountainous type of terrain, with some agriculture. And then if you go further north and inland, you see the jungle terrain. So there's the jungle, you have the mountains, and you also have the desert coast.
I'm sure you made certain to see all of it.
I didn't. I was in the mountains a little bit, and was able to visit, certain areas. Lake Titicaca, of course, was the highest freshwater lake in the world. So I was up in that area, and also in the semi-jungle area, which is the area of Cusco, which is very famous for the site of the Incan Empire. That was their capital city, if you will. So I did visit there a few times. I was never really into the others heavy jungle areas, so I never did travel to that area. So my experience is limited to mostly to the coast, but some visits to the mountains and also to areas such as Cusco.
That's great. Well, let's start showing pictures.
Okay.
Where shall we begin? I like this one.
You like that one?
Let's. I'll try to hold this up over here in a way that Calvin can lock it in on us on the
Right.
screen, and he'll let us know when he's ready to do that.
Okay.
What are we looking at?
Well, again, kids are kids wherever they go, but these are just some of the kids from our parish. And usually in the summer months, their summer months, which would be January, February, we had a center where we built a kitchen, where we built a couple of classrooms, and we would have like a summer school for these kids. So we'd get some young people from our parish, we'd give them a little stipend, and they would run classes for these kids, and they would go over things like mathematics and maybe some reading, but they would also do a lot of fun things. So they'd do a lot of singing, and we'd also, like once a week, we'd try and take them to the beach. Of course, the beach is a big attraction there, so we just pile them in our pickup truck, which is not too safe or not too recommended. It's not legal either, but up here it's not legal anyways. But we'd pile those kids in, maybe make a couple trips, and we'd take them down to the beach, and they'd spend the day there, and we'd have lunch there. And of course, kicking the soccer ball around on the beach was a big deal and a lot of fun there. They loved their soccer, and so a lot of beach soccer goes on. And these kids were that ball was probably donated to from a youth group in the diocese or something like that. So they'd have some fun on the beach.
I looked at that picture, and those were my first words. Kids are kids.
That's right.
Wherever they are.
That's right.
Oh, the joy of being a child. This is another absolutely charming picture, and I don't know if it's by design or if it just happened to turn out that way.
Well, it's more or less by design. This was taken at one of our centers, the one that we have out in the valley, which is Jesus Sembrador, or the parable of Jesus the sower. And so this is a small center, and not a lot of families, about 40 families perhaps, and there are farmers or the workers who work in the fields there. And occasionally, after Mass or other occasions, especially on a feast day or a special day, an anniversary perhaps, they'd have a communal meal. And the families would come in, and they use these big pots, and they mix up their stews or boil corn or whatever. And this little girl, of course, was just one of the girls who was sitting next to that empty pot, and so I just took advantage of it and took a picture of that.
It's absolutely beautiful balance, and there's a whole story there. Or you can apply your own message to that picture. Sure. When you look at it. That's the beauty of a great photograph. All right, here's another one that has that what they say about 1,000 words. And I think there are at least 1,000 in this picture, because we get an idea about some of that interesting terrain that you and I were talking about earlier.
Right. This will give you a good idea of the terrain, and as I said, it's desert coast. And this was that same area where we run the summer school. We were doing some building at that time, and actually in the background there's the beginnings of a little oven, which was built from scratch. Very interesting too, the whole process of building a brick oven of that nature. And this gentleman was just one of the workers there, and they do a lot of cement work. Of course, they mix the cement by hand down below, and if you're doing roof work or whatever, they are lifting it up in buckets, which are sometimes oil tins. So we sometimes get oil down there, for food help, and so the big 5-gallon tins or whatever, and they just rig them up and make them into buckets, which they can use on construction jobs. And so they lift them up, and they're in and out of the cement, and it can be quite messy. And this gentleman was just cleaning up after a hard day's work, and I caught him cleaning up with the hose.
It's funny, just the structure of that oven in the background, for some reason, reminded me of pictures I've seen of Jerusalem.
Well, I've never been to Jerusalem, but I'll take your word for it. But it looks like a little bit of a type of a temple structure, perhaps,
Yeah,
huh? Right.
That's interesting.
Right.
Well, that turned out to be a bakery?
It did turn out to be a bakery, and the bakery is still functioning. That would be the interior part, the actual oven part of the bakery, but now there's a structure around that oven, and that bakery was built pretty much with the help of people from St. Bernard's Parish in Saranac Lake, and they did a Lenten project. And Father Tim Susi, who's still pastor there, got the people involved, and it wasn't any special collection or anything, but they just worked, and saved during the Lenten season, and they sent down the money to do something positive, to do something concrete, and we used that money as a starter fund for building that bakery.
That's pretty neat. Now, you did some serious hiking when you were down there, and I want to give, I think all of us, I think I got it in the right direction in any case. Let me hold this up and see if Calvin can get a good shot of it. These are the things that many of us have read about with great fascination. Some of these ruins in Peru are world-renowned, and don't you wish you could transport yourself back in time to when this civilization was flourishing? Huh? Have you thought about what it must have been like?
Well, we can look back at it with romantic eyes, but I'm not sure if I'd want to go back there. Maybe as an observer. As an observer, perhaps, because I know some of the practices perhaps were quite crude and cruel.
Cruel is the word,
right?
For sure.
But to balance that off, particularly the Incan Empire had some tremendous artisans, really some brilliant architects, and really were quite gifted in so many ways. And so their culture and lives on in ruins such as this. They had building techniques which scientists today are still struggling to figure out. When the Spanish arrived and they saw some of these buildings and their use of stonework, for example, they couldn't comprehend it because it was so much more stable and sturdy than their own structures. And supposedly they're the civilized ones, and they're coming and they're encountering these works. And because they couldn't explain it, they said, well, that's the work of the devil. And so they ended up trying to...
Isn't that what we always say?
Right. So they ended up destroying a lot of really marvelous temples and structures. And often what they did, too, with some of that stonework is that they would take the stones and use those stones to build churches. It's interesting, too, just to give you some idea of the worth and the quality of the work by some of these Incan artisans and constructors. When there was an earthquake, the Spanish structures would crumble and collapse, and these structures would remain. So
there's a lesson in there somewhere.
Right, right.
So what are we looking at in this photograph?
In this particular one, these are some of the ruins which are close to the site of Machu Picchu, which was really a religious site for the Incas. Machu Picchu was a city in itself, but it was located high in the mountains and out of the way, and perhaps it was the Incas did go there to escape from the Spanish conquistadors, and the Spanish never found this place. So it was a religious site. It was built to to focus in on the sun, particularly. There was the Incas worshiped the sun, and so the buildings really focus in on the sun, whether the sun is rising or setting. And so some of the temples or other structures keep that sun as a focus there. And so it's strategically located, but it was also located in a site which was not easily accessible, and certainly not easy to find, because the Spanish never did find it. And it was only rediscovered in the 20th century, in the early 20th century, by an American who was down there looking for other ruins, and by accident he kind of stumbled on the site, the lost city of the Incas, and now it is this would be not the this would be a short distance from the actual ruins of Machu Picchu, but it gives you some idea of the terracing that they did, which they used for farming, and also some of the other structures which they lived in, and it really is a striking to visit these sites. Yes.
Now, you said it was really inaccessible in those days. How about now? This was a 2 or 3 day trip for you too, wasn't it?
Many people throughout the world. I mean, it is a world attraction now, and many people from all different countries of the world are attracted to the ruins of Machu Picchu. One of the options that they do offer is, of course, they have trains that run there every day from the city of Cusco, and so most of the tourists opt for that, and it's like a day trip, and so you leave early in the morning, and after several hours you can get there before lunch, have lunch there, tour the ruins, and then go back in the evening. And so it's an all-day trip, and it's accessible by train at this point. They even have helicopters now that can go to the site. But another option would be to hike the trails, walking as the Incas did. It was a running trail, and you can hike those trails and get to the ruins in that way. And so that's you have to have a little bit more time and perhaps be in a little bit better condition, because the altitude can be quite tough.
Altitude can be a factor. How many thousand feet are we talking about now? You're talking about 8,000 feet before. This is more than that, isn't it?
Right. Actually, I think Machu Picchu is about 12 or 13,000 feet. The site of this mountain was probably about 17,000 feet, so we had to go up before we went down. And so a friend of mine came down. It was just the year before I came back to the States, and I'd been to Machu Picchu a couple of times before. My parents came down to visit, and I went with them, and I've had other family members, and we visited, but I've never walked the trail. So when a friend of mine was coming down, and I knew it was my last year, I said, well, why don't we try hiking? And so there's like a 7-day journey and then 3-day journey. We did the 3-day journey, which was enough for me. And so we went with a small group. We had a guide, and we hiked those trails, and it just breathtaking, just marvelous, a marvelous encounter with the country, seeing things that ordinarily maybe you wouldn't see. And then coming down, so this was probably I took this picture, I think, at the highest point. This was probably the highest point of the trail, as I said, about 17,000 feet. And then we went down from there, and then we camped out. And then we got up real early. When we got close to the site, we got up real early in the morning before sunrise. And we had to walk about 40 minutes. And to get to the overview of Machu Picchu, we wanted to be there to see the sunrise.
Of course.
So a lot of people were there at this one site, and so we were there overlooking the ruins, hoping to see the sunrise on the ruins, which kind of a spiritual experience in itself.
It's amazing. You've whetted all of our appetites, and I'm sure we'll be calling our travel agents and hope that travel to South America will be safe in the future. You have many other photographs. I should tell our viewers that we'll look at some video later on and talk about that too. Did you take a lot of video down there?
Well, not personally, but we did occasionally make videos, and that was a good way for us to evangelize our diocese. We used it for purposes of education. And usually our priests come back during the summer months, or we have 2 priests down there every other summer. I was expected to come back and do some preaching in the diocese. And usually groups are asking you for information or knowledge, and so we'd show little video clips. And so we had someone in the parish, a young man, who was able to handle a camcorder, and so he did a lot of videotaping for us. And one of the videos that you'll be seeing is one of those. You know.
Terrific. We'll take a look at those in just a while. Okay, we put the microphone between us, and I'm sure it'll pick up both of our voices. Show us what you've got and explain it for us, Father.
Well, these are just some shots from the city of Arequipa, and this would be actually on the way to Arequipa. Again, you see the desert coast, so we have to go up. We start at sea level. Arequipa, as I mentioned, is 8,000 feet above sea level, and so we have to go up these long, winding roads, which are an adventure in itself. But then we hit a flat stretch of about 40 minutes to an hour, and that flat stretch is all pure desert. And you can see the desert here, and these little they're really little vending stores or whatever, and so they would sell Coca-Cola. You see the Coca-Cola sign there,
Is that a ubiquitous sign or what?
Well, it's all over. I think you find that wherever you go in the world. But people, there might be a couple people living there, and they made these things basically out of straw or reeds, and many people do start their building in that way. They start building with reeds or a straw type structure, some scraps of wood, and eventually they move on to bricks and have a more stable structure. But these things are very common along the roadways and even in the cities themselves, where these little kiosks, they're called, where they would sell penny candies or other minor supplies, their matches or whatever, or Cokes, or Inca Cola is their national drink. It's it's a yellowish type drink that people say tastes like liquid bubble gum. But we're on the way there, and these structures here basically give you an idea of the city of Arequipa, which, as I mentioned, it's a major city of about a million people. You might see these sites again approaching the city of Arequipa, and this would be the mountainous terrain as you approach Arequipa. These shots here appear to be our center in Maharani. This is a port area here. This is a bay, and it's a protective area. These small dots here would be fishing craft, and so it's a port area for the fishermen. There's another section of the port where the large ocean-going vessels would come in, and that's where a lot of people again look for work, working on loading and unloading at the docks, and also fishing is one of the major industries in that area. These would be, again, these would,
we'd have to get a Pepsi sign, wouldn't we?
We have to balance the Coca-Cola with Pepsi. And these would be shots of the city of Mollendo. Again, some of the structures there. This little, it's like a sports, small sports area where they would have some seating, which would just be basically of cement. So there's a few levels or steps for cement for seating, and then this paved area here is basically a soccer court. And so the kids are always out. If they don't have a cemented area to play soccer, they'll play on the streets or they'll play in the backyards. But wherever you go in the country, you're going to see kids out playing soccer.
Talk about rabid fans.
Right.
Oh my.
This is a good shot here because it gives you some idea of the beaches that you encounter in Mollendo. And you'll see actually there's miles of this beautiful white sand. And so it's a marvelous resource for the people in that area. A lot of people from the city of Arequipa will come down in January and February especially, and they'll take advantage of the beaches. They'll come down on a bus and spend the day, or people who have more resources will have summer homes. And so there's some beautiful summer homes too that you'll find along the coast, but basically they come down to take advantage of the beaches there. And this is the train yard which borders the beach around the city area itself. And they used to do more shipping in this area. Actually, Mollendo itself was a port, and it no longer is. Everything has shifted a little bit further north to Maharani. Occasionally we still get the ocean-going vessels who will pump oil to holding tanks in Mollendo, but those are the only ships that would go to Mollendo, would be the oil ships, the oil tankers. This is a shot of our main temple. As I said, I believe Father John Kenahan was instrumental in building that temple. It looks a little bit like a Colosseum, but the cross on top will distinguish it as Catholic or Christian. This is another one of our little temples in the center of Villa Lourdes, which is not too far from the main temple. And again, we have each little barrio has their unique identity, and each little barrio, of course, wants their unique place for meeting. And so this little church here was built, again, largely with help from the diocese as well as from their local fundraising activities. They would have like a chicken barbecue, work and other activities, just like parishes do here today, to raise money for their building projects. And so that's how this little church was built there. Here we see the downtown area of Mollendo. This looks like the older church, which is staffed by a Peruvian pastor there. And this is the market area. You'll see market areas all. And so farmers market takes on a whole new meaning down there, because most of the vending is done in the streets. They do have their storefronts as well, but especially on the weekends, you'll see the market areas flourish with all sorts of things. I mean, by not so much in Mollendo, but certainly in Arequipa, wide variety of products that you can buy or sell, or services as well. Here's a bread vendor. Here's a meat vendors. It's like a covered area in the downtown area of Mollendo, and so these are our meat vendors, and it's interesting too to walk through there and to see them cutting up the meat or cutting up the fish. I like to fish on the St. Lawrence and watch my dad cut up fish, but it's interesting too to go through this market and see them, these ladies handle the fish and how they cut them up. And
Did you like the local food?
oh, I did quite well with the food. You have to be careful sometimes with what you eat. Recommended that you don't eat off the street. The hygiene is much better, since I think in recent years they had a terrible time there recently in the early 90s with the cholera. And after that outbreak, the government and the health officials were very much more sensitive and very much more conscious of educating the people about cleanliness. And so things are much better now, but you still would not eat certain things off the streets without washing them. And but the food, I found the food agreeable to me, and I love fish. I love fruits and vegetables. They have like hundreds of different kinds of potatoes.
Oh, right,
Sure. So I didn't care for their meats too much. Meat is not a major staple for them. And the meat is not always the freshest either. But I didn't eat a lot of meat down there, but certainly the other foods were quite good.
Yeah.
There's the Inca Cola truck.
There's the Inca Cola truck, that's right, yeah. So I wish I had a bottle right now. It's quite
Peruvian mellow yellow.
mellow yellow, that's right, yeah. No, it's, and sometimes you see in the street, it's quite common here, and you just see it in our cities as well, but entertainers, and you see the beautiful colors too, the typical colors of the Peruvians there. I have a little blanket here similar to the one that this gentleman is wearing as a poncho, but these are just the natural colors, and it's meant to express the richness of the culture, and also earth tones. I mean, they're into the colors of earth. Brown and black and white would be a typical Peruvian color, and so some materials will be there. And then you have the brighter colors too, but they try to draw largely from from nature. So red might be the sky or the sun, and the blue, of course, is the ocean, and the green, of course, is the earth. And here you see the browns, and so just beautiful, beautiful colors. And we made some stoles too for celebrations in mass that we'd make of the native colors, and they're quite nice.
Yeah.
These are just other areas of the market. Here's our singer there entertaining, and this is the coast, to give you some idea of the coast. The ocean can get rough at times, but this is a port area of Mundo, which they don't use any longer, but the ships used to come in here and dock, and then the train lines would run along here, so they can take the cargo from the ships and put it on the train beds. But this is the rough, rocky coastal area, which is just up from the sandy beaches. So you'll see a combination. You'll see stretches of just pure sandy beach, and other areas are more rugged and not too suitable for beach. These are photos of our center in Maharani, and I believe this was an Easter vigil. And a friend of mine took these pictures. And as an Easter vigil, we always start with the lighting of the fire outside. And so we had a nice fire at the outside of the temple in Maharani, and I had these white flowing robes, and I almost set myself on fire.
Oh, did you really?
That night, so. but luckily I didn't. And, but these would be shots of the Easter vigil in the city of Maharani. These would just be other shots of the city of Mollendo. You see the structures are not too elegant. They're very simple brick, and most of the families do live very simply. There are some, just to give you a balanced idea, there are some very nice homes too in the city of Mollendo, so it's not all poverty. There are some very nice homes, and in fact the rectory we lived in was quite nice. Perhaps comparable to some of the rectories we have here in the States. So we weren't too deprived in that sense. These are other shots of the coast, an old fishing boat that is laying in the middle of the railroad tracks now.
I noticed that down here, yeah, that's neat.
Right. So I don't know, maybe that's enough of those. Here's another one of our centers here out in the valley. Little bell. We always ring the bell to attract the people, otherwise they might not show up. So there would be some of the children working in the fields, and this was one of our coordinators there at the time. So each of the centers had a layperson who was in charge, basically, of organizing that center, and this coordinator would work very closely with the pastor in setting up meetings and organizing the masses, making sure that people knew about different activities and that sort of thing. So we had a lot of lay involvement in those centers. Yeah, and she was a hard worker too. She was a farmer. Of course, she worked in the farming center there. That's perhaps enough. The other ones are just these are different shots of Machu Picchu, I believe, to give you an idea of the ruins.
I love it.
The ruins of Machu Picchu.
Yeah.
Yeah. These are shots of some of the ruins there.
I suppose they'll be studied forever, won't they?
Oh, I suspect they will. Yeah, and as I said,
New theories will develop.
yeah, there's still a major attraction to
Oh,
it.
of course.
This was probably an altar for sacrifice. They did have human sacrifice.
Yeah,
But-
there were
but
some
in,
cruel and
right.
brutal things, as
Right.
you alluded to
Right. But
earlier in our discussion. It's true. They were very complex people, weren't
they were. So the human sacrifice, I must add, was very rare, but and usually it would involve perhaps desperate situations. More common was the sacrifice of animals, like the llamas or that sort of thing. Here's a shot of Machu Picchu. This would be the distinctive mountain at the site, and you could also, there's a trail that would lead up there, which was. So perhaps that's enough of that.
Okay. Could you really feel the history when you were there? Could you feel it?
You can sense the history again. We come here in the United States and in Canada with relatively young history. We're we're just over over 200 years old. But
We should be embarrassed by it when we go to
No,
places like that, but
no.
we're not.
yeah,
Europe has such great, rich history too.
right. I don't know if we need to look at these or somebody's
Okay.
clowning around there, but
Well, that's cool.
actually, I
Is
think
there
this
anything in here that you might think
No.
we'd find
Well,
interesting? Not too
no,
much.
this was just was back in language school, and usually before
I like that.
before we head off, we usually have some sort of a gathering, or it was a wonderful opportunity to meet people from throughout the world. They come from different countries, but basically they come to the language school in Bolivia to learn Spanish or one of the native dialects. So we had people, we were studying with people from Korea, from Australia,
Oh, no
from
kidding.
Ireland, from England, from different European countries. And these are missionaries, mostly religious or priests, but also lay missionaries who were making a commitment to work in Latin America. But before they go to their work site, we would gather and study for a few months, and it would be an intensive language course. And so we would study with native teachers and live with some of the families there. So in other words, you had to, if you wanted to eat, you'd have to ask for food, and you'd have to use your language. So that's the best way to learn language, really, is to actually be immersed in it. and
You're
to
immersed in
speak
it. I'd love to
Yeah.
hear Spanish with an Irish accent, wouldn't
Right.
you? Or
Oh,
Gaelic?
yeah. Right. This is just a visit on a day off. Father Dan Chapin was visiting at the time,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so we visited Arequipa, and that was probably a day off. This would give you an idea
Oh, look at
of some of the colors. Now, as I
Oh,
mentioned, there's
wow.
very little rain in the area, but in the winter months, I would say like May, June, July, if they get a couple of weeks of steady drizzle, that dark, bleak, dusty desert will turn into this
Isn't it
flowering.
amazing?
So just a few weeks of rain, and this will just sprout, and then of course after
I
a few
love it.
weeks it'll die
That's
off.
fun.
It'll die off and it'll be gone again.
How can people viewing this and hearing that story not believe in a supreme being?
Right.
You tell me how.
Right. Yeah, it is
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And these would be shots of the beach. That's a little
Oh, yeah,
awkward, but
beautiful shots.
right. And this was one of the visits that I did to the mountains, where Father Paul Hagen worked with the Marinol sisters, and so as I was just up visiting the site, there's a particular site here where you can see the condors. So it's an attractive site for tourists.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So you travel up.
What a sense of the prehistoric. Watch a condor
Right,
fly.
Right.
An
It was just-
amazing wingspan.
so this was just a little boy who was there visiting as well, and so that was. This is an interesting shot here, in that this was part of the fruits of a 3-week mission which we ran with the help of the Redemptor's priests. It was a very intensive time, and we had priests from our diocese. We had at that time, I think we had about 18 priests, either from our diocese or native Peruvians or Redemptorists, who came down and lived with our parish. The two parishes actually worked together on this. And so it was an intensive evangelization time. And we all went out to different areas of the parish. And so for those weeks, I was living in one of our barrios, one of our centers of Alto Inclán. And so I lived with one of the families there, with a seminarian, a Peruvian seminarian. And we would live and work there, and we'd celebrate Mass every day with them there. And we would meet in the evenings to discuss Bible and reflect on life, trying to form small communities within the barrio itself. And so it was a really intense evangelization time. And afterwards, as a final celebration, each of the areas, and we were probably working at that point in about, including the other parish, about 12 or 13 different centers. And then we had a procession for the final Mass to the Colosseum, the sacred Colosseum. And so here we're marching in from Alto Inclán, where I was working, but you had 13 other processions coming together, all heading to the Colosseum in the city of Mollendo. And there were thousands of people in that Colosseum, and all of us as priests, so we had, about 18 priests were up on the altar, and we were celebrating this mission, this evangelization time. And when it came for the final blessing, of course, we had thousands of people, and I saw in the back, I saw this fire truck pull up, and I said, well, that's kind of weird, but so the Redemptorist priest who was leading the Mass, all of a sudden after communion, he kind of disappeared. And then he shows up in the crowds with a hose. So we did the final blessing. He blessed the water in the tank for the fire truck. And then with the hose, we blessed everybody. And so it was a marvelous...
Oh, isn't that great?
It was a marvelous...
Oh,
I'm not sure
wonderful.
Liturgically how the bishop
Never mind.
So
You
I
may
hope he doesn't
too.
watch this show, but anyways.
Oh, that's neat.
But it was a marvelous experience. It was spiritually uplifting. The people just so enthusiastic. I mean, they really came together for that mission. And so it was a wonderful experience of church, really. This is our cook at the rectory there, and her daughter. So she's been with us for a number of years now. She's still cooking down there. She came, single mother, came from the mountains. I think Father George Maroon first hired her, but didn't really know much about cooking other than doing a few native dishes. But a quick learner. And just a wonderful Christian woman, and really dedicated to her church and to the priest down there. So she's the cook, and there's her daughter. This little shot here is interesting too. That was a Good Friday procession. The Good Friday, we get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning. We start at the church, and we invite young people and all ages really to gather at the church, and then we process. In procession, we go up behind the hills of the city of Mollendo to a cross which is laid at the top of the hill. And as we're going up, we do the Stations of the Cross, and we pray the Rosary, and we get up and we do a liturgical celebration at the top of the little hill overlooking the city of Mollendo. So we start about 5 o'clock in the morning, and usually about 9 o'clock we arrive at the cross, and then we have a liturgical celebration, and sometimes we'll hear confessions or whatever, and then everyone just kind of drifts down. And then they have their, the major liturgical celebration, of course, would be in the afternoon, about noon or 3 o'clock in the parishes. We'd have two. Within our centers, usually on Good Friday, we just have two celebrations. We wouldn't celebrate it in every center. But in Maharani, we do one, and we'd also do one in our main temple.
That's great. Wonderful photographs. Is that enough for there?
That's enough, yeah.
Well, we have some video that we'd love to look at and discuss as we do. Do you mind?
Sure.
Let's do it. We probably won't need sound then,
Oops, that's not the one.
When the pictures start, Calvin will start, and we'll start.
We're on the air.
All right, what are we going to see?
Well, you're just going to see some of what you saw in the photos already. These are just some video clips mostly of the parish itself and different aspects of the parish. So we had a couple young people put this together. Actually, I asked Father Monday to put something together for me. I was teaching a class at the time for the lay ministry program on social justice, and I wanted to give the people in the class an idea of the mission down there and the work we do. So this is the video that was put together. Here we just see different shots. This is again down in the beach area. There's the train yard beyond the beach, and I think we saw some photos of that as well. There's a distinctive castle that overlooks the ocean. And it was actually originally built, I think, by one of the former bishops of Arequipa as a summer home, and then turned into a Carmelite monastery, and now it's kind of a hotel that isn't used very much. Here's you see the people, and they just love the beach, and thousands of people really come to take advantage of that beach. Is some of the storage bins in the port of Mathura here. Here's the shot of the port. And again, the major vessels would come in there and with their cargo. And then the smaller boats, of course, would be fishing boats. So we see some fishing boats in the background. Here's a scene that looks like the St. Lawrence River almost. You know?
Sure does.
Yeah. And some of the children there, again, is some idea. This is the typical desert terrain there. And people here, again, they don't have running water, so they're dependent upon spigots, maybe around the corner, so they carry their buckets, fill them up with water, and that's how they get their water for drinking and for cleaning. These are some of the poor structures. Some of the men, perhaps waiting around for work in the park area of Mundo. Sometimes they might operate a truck or something of that nature, and they're just looking for someone to come and ask them to do some carrying or loading or whatever. Again, the terrain very, very rugged, very sparse. Children, of course, again. These are children from one of the little preschools. I think we went to visit them one day. They love to have their picture taken. They love to have their picture taken. Again, this is one of the spigots. So a number of people, they don't yet have indoor plumbing. Eventually, they should have it. But because this is a newer area, which is just building up, they still do not have all of the facilities of electricity and plumbing that eventually they hope to have. The more established areas, of course, would have those things. Again, we're seeing some of the newer constructions. They start with a reed-type wall and eventually work their way up to wood and eventually brick. This is one of the ladies in the parish. She does some volunteer, and she's putting on a little show there, I believe. But you see the lineup of buckets. The water doesn't run continuously. It's only certain hours some days that it runs. So you see the big lineup of buckets there, and so people get their water, and then they'll take it home for the day. I should stress too that some of the homes, these are the poorer homes, but they're not all poor. There's some very nice homes there. Comparable to the homes we have in the States. That was just a shot of one of the schools, the kids lined up at school. Peruvian beer, very good. I think it rivals any beer we have here in the States. It's a very good beer, yeah. And these are probably workers who have just finished work putting on a roof, and they're having a meal and a beer afterwards to celebrate. This is our friend, too, from the parish, and I think she's, again, putting on a little bit of a show for the camera, but she's an interesting little character, yeah. Probably arguing over who's first in line or something like that, you know. So that's entertaining in itself to watch those.
Classic features, don't they?
Classic features, yeah. This gentleman might have a drinking problem, but I think he did. But he was a good worker. But drinking and alcoholism is a problem there, as it is in many countries, and a lot of families suffer because of that, as in any situation. This is the rugged terrain again in the outlying area. This is probably one of the dumping areas too. People do go through dumps looking for salvageable materials that they might be able to use or sell. Looks like a women's soccer team, and so the women get into it as well as the men, and they really enjoy this. So this is probably an anniversary day, and so they're probably serving chicken and having a soccer game and making a big day, and they have a lot of fun in those days. This is a market area here again. There's the hanging chicken there, and Yep, they do shoe repair. You can fix your shoes. I found that the sandals can go a long way. You take them to
Really?
these gentlemen. They're very skilled, and they can fix up an old pair of shoes, and you can really get by
That's great.
with for a good many years. This looks like a little construction crew, and then usually when they do a major piece of construction, like putting on the roof of particularly of a new house, or it could be a chapel too, or whatever, and they put on the roof, if it's of cement, they need a lot of workers. They might do it on a Sunday afternoon where the men are free, and so they start early, they work hard, and the women will then prepare a nice meal, and it's a real communal event in many ways. This is one of the talks given in our chapel. This one has to do, I believe, with catechesis, so would be a talk on family catechesis. And there is a shot again of our main temple. That front part is office areas, and then the back part is the church. This is our rectory. This is our living quarters. There's Father Dan Chapin, Father Maroon. This might have been during the mission. This was June of '98, so this was during our mission that I was talking about. And we had many of our priests, former missionaries who came down, who participated in that mission. There's Father Bill Minch.
Oh, yeah.
I worked with Father Bill for 2 years.
Oh, my. What a guy.
There's Father Pat Mundy, who was the current pastor, and then there's Father Decker, our newest missionary down there.
Yeah.
Replace him. This is one of the baptisms, of course, that we're going on. This was probably First Communion. Sometimes when you have First Communion, we'd have well over 100 communions, and we might have up to 20 baptisms on that Mass.
Oh, my.
So,
Really?
so in other words, they would be baptized and then receive their First Communion on the same day. This would be one of the chapels. This would be a liturgical celebration with some of the young people. The young people, of course, very active in our parish, and they put on these little skits, and it's really quite good, some of the work that they do with the young people, and it keeps people involved and interested, and it can be quite moving too. They're quite good in that way. And they're singing a song with gestures there. That's part of the catechesis too. And this is the park in front of the church, where there was probably a special meal offered. And they're doing some sort of games there. So these are some of our young people working with the children in catechesis. And this might be a special day too. So they're very creative in their games, and it's a lot of fun to watch them do that. This is another teaching session. This would be one of our First Friday celebrations. I mentioned climbing up on First Friday early in the morning, going up to the cross above. And this is one of the nurses who worked in a health program, which we worked with CARE. We started a health program for primary health care, and she was teaching about dentistry and teeth, and she was teaching one child how to brush his teeth, and did a great job, and then he swallowed everything. It must have tasted all right, 'cause he had, yeah.
I love it.
And then providing some nutrition there. One of our centers there. And this is the International Day of the Child, so we got the schools involved,
sure.
And they love to march and take to the streets. And so the different centers would get together, make their own banners. We'd get the kids involved. This might be a special mission day, which we collaborated with other parishes in the valley and in Mollendo, and this was to promote the whole notion of mission. It was perhaps International Day of Mission, and again, processions. Now, I'm not sure what this procession is. It could be that same day, or it could be something like the anniversary of the parish, where we get all the groups together, they make up their banners, and we process through the streets promoting our message. This is the newer parish, or the older parish, in the center of the city of Mollendo. And this looks like the port area in Maharani. They were bringing in second-hand cars there for a while, usually from Japan, and they would store them there in the ports. Thing is, they'd have to change the steering wheel, and many of these cars was on the right side. And of course, we're used to the steering wheel on the left, and so before they could sell them, they had to shift the steering, move it over. And that created some problems too, but it also created work.
Sure.
This would be the blessing start of a new chapel area. So that was the cornerstone right there, being blessed with champagne in the water.
Sure.
And there's the later fruits of that same stone. And the ladies preparing for the meal afterwards. Now that's how they carry up the cement. Now
You explained the bucket and that.
Yeah, you see this elderly lady too. I did it for show. She was really working, but I did it for the camera. And now we're blessing the roof there, and they're very proud too of the structures that they built there.
Sure.
So yeah, we're celebrating Mass here, and they're also very gifted musically. They love to sing, and which is one of the things that I miss.
Yeah.
I miss. Perhaps celebrating there. Now this is probably in English if you want to hear that. The rest of it was all Spanish, but I don't know if you want to hear Father Decker.
Sure.
I would like to extend our greetings to you from St. Martin's Church and the 6 mission stations here in Mollendo. I've been asked to give my perspective of our mission presence here in Peru. In St. Matthew's Gospel, we read of the commissioning of the apostles. At the end of the Gospel, Jesus says, "Full authority has been given to me, both in heaven and on earth. Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations. Baptize them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit." The Gospel is proclaimed in our mission sending ceremony, when we receive our mission cross and the blessing of our bishop, as we are sent on mission. In essence, it explains the reason for our mission presence. Our work here is to baptize, to proclaim the good news of the gospel, and to teach the people about our Catholic faith. We currently serve in St. Martin's Church and 6 mission stations in different neighborhoods throughout the city. I think Father George Maroon says it best. We come here to evangelize, but it is we ourselves who are evangelized. We come to share the good news with the poor. The people of Mollendo in Maharani share with us their journey of faith, and we as priests come away with a broader view of our Catholic faith, which by its nature is universal. The Church reaches out to all people in all times. An important part of our presence here is sharing the resources of the diocese with the poor of Mollendo and Maharani. Due in part to the generosity of the people of the diocese, we have been able to build and maintain a main church and 6 mission stations for the past 35 years. We can be proud of our presence at this time. In closing, I would like to thank you, the people of the diocese, for your generosity to our mission effort. I would like to thank you not only for your financial support, but for your sacrifices, and most of all, for your prayers for our mission effort. I thank you not only in my own name, but in the name of the poor express the gratitude of the people for our diocese and for those of us who have worked here. Thank you, and God bless all of you.
I'm Father Pat Mundy, and I'm pastor and present pastor of the parish of San Martin de Porres in Mollendo. Father J. Seymour went home, and now I'm taking his place. And in the parish here we have a mission, our supply priest to the Church of Peru. And for 35 years, as you know, we've been doing this. And every year we continue the work of the priest before us. Last year we worked together, Father Jay and myself, on a mission, 98, which is really meant to we had 15 priests with us, 15 lay people, to visit all the homes and communities of the parish, to invite, to help, to draw people to the community of faith founded by Jesus, to share sacrament and share the fraternity and love of the community. This is our goal this year, to continue what began. The mission really lasts 5 years, and last year was the beginning. And we do this really excuse me.
It's confusing in Spanish and English, no?
Asambleas de Filiados, so family assemblies throughout the community, which invite people to deepen their faith together in Christ, and celebrate and to realize their faith together as a community of believers here in Montana. And of course, celebrating the Eucharistic sacraments in the whole community of San Martin. We ask for your prayers all the time, because that's the most important thing you can give to us. And also your interest. And when you can, remember us with your gifts of finances or whatever kind of help that you can give to the mission. We use all kinds of things, but mostly prayer, your love and interest and support. Thank you for all that you've done, and thank you for anything that we will be doing in the future. God bless you from the parish of San Martin de Porres and Leon.
That's neat. That's kind of neat. Yeah. That's competing with the wildlife, the birds and the dogs and the cars going by.
The dogs are a big reality down there.
Lapsing into Spanish every now and again.
That's right. No,
that's really cool.
Right. Yeah. And so, it really is a unique experience, and I would encourage people too to not only to follow Father Pat and Father Bob's advice, but about continuing support. But even if you get a chance to experience it, we've had different people from our diocese who have gone down and visited, and I think it's changed their lives as it has changed mine.
It's great. We talk to the youngsters and some of the not so youngsters who go to Nicaragua every year.
Right.
We talk about the mission of hope and what a tremendous impact it makes, not only on the lives of the people there, but on the kids who go there. Mm-hmm. Calvin and I have talked with many of these young people who've noticed an epiphany. I mean, their lives have changed dramatically just from the experience of unconditional love. And that's not a bad word to spread around,
No, I think we've heard that somewhere before, maybe in the Bible or someplace. I'm not sure.
But it's true. I can see it here in Peru in the photographs you've told us, and the smiles on these young faces, in the way the adults work and play together. And we know many of their lives are extremely difficult compared to ours. And yet they find obviously a great refuge in the church, and their lives revolve around the mission, don't they?
In many ways, it does. It's not. I wouldn't say it's completely that for all down there, but certainly for a good many, it is. And it's certainly, looking at a video like this or whatever, does give you a different perspective, and it does hopefully make us more appreciative of what we have, and allows us to ask ourselves a question too, like if with so little one can still be joyful and happy, why can't we when we have so much?
It's amazing, isn't it? A little food for thought, if you don't mind, at the end of our program here today. I still think you have to learn to be fluent in French, though, now that you're up here near the border.
Yes.
Or are you already?
No, I'm hoping to. I'm hoping to. Maybe pick up a little bit more. I can speak a few words.
I love the French language,
Right.
too, and I'm not even bilingual, and
Right.
I resent the fact that our education system doesn't almost force that issue, because it's so easy to teach young kids a second, third, and fourth language.
I think so too. I think it's so important, and just in terms of the French too, to encourage all your viewers. If they speak French and want to go to confession, I won't understand too much, and God's mercy is just as great.
You better believe it. For those people who are watching this program today, and it's been a great education, a wonderful experience for me, who want to help some way, somehow, should they contact their parish priest?
I think they could contact their parish priest, and certainly we have a mission office too in Ogdensburg with Father George Maroon, and he's basically the coordinator, director of the mission activities down there, and he keeps us in touch with what's going on down there, and he's a great contact person too, if there is any interest, or if there's concerns or questions. Sure, talk to your parish priest, and certainly or feel free to call me too, and I'll offer what information I can to help.
Just an idea that there are other places under the sun besides your hometown, Champlain, New York, Morrisonville, Rouse's Point, and points in between. It's fun to do programs like this because we get to meet new people, and we get to experience new things through their eyes. So, Father J. Seymour, I thank you so much for allowing us to come into your life for a short time today. And I hope we've inspired some of the folks out there to do something beyond the little horizons that they see. Sometimes we close ourselves in and protect ourselves, especially in light of the present world situation, and try to divorce ourselves from other parts of the world. But there are people who need our help outside our own little family unit and our own little community. So if we can expand that view a little bit, I think we might have accomplished something today.
Oh, I absolutely agree, and just thank you for the opportunity, and just let you know you've inspired me today.
Oh, wow. It works all these ways. Maybe we'll see what kind of a cookie is on that Peruvian food there someday. Father, thanks so much, and we'll see you again very soon, we hope.
Okay, thanks, and God bless.
And who knows where we're going to be next time. Probably not on the top of that mountain, but who knows where we're going to be next time for our little corner.